We have done NABARD, we have done this concept of nationalized bank. If time permits, please discuss about the NMP, National Monetization Pipeline. Okay. Have we discussed that asset monetization when we were discussing public sector units? I think
Yes, sir, we are
Yes,
discussed.
sir.
see, what is the difference between asset monetization and disinvestment? Anybody? Asset monetization and disinvestment.
Sir, asset monetization basically involves the creation of new resources of current industry.
Sorry, I didn't get you. I think your voice was not audible. Investment ownership is still
Am
government.
I audible, sir?
Please continue.
Asset monetization basically deals with the creation of new resources.
See,
For
the idea is that this investment in dilution of share of government. All of you have written absolutely correct things. And I am expecting a question in the coming exam on either asset monetization, national monetization pipeline, and all those, because this issue was covered in the economic survey and the government is focusing on it. So I expect a question on this. See, the asset monetization is basically, or national monetization pipeline is that the government, there are two type of companies, public sector companies, forget about the departments. One type of companies are listed on BSE or NSE market, and other companies are not listed. Any example of the company, public sector company, majorly known to anybody and everybody, and which is not listed on the market? Any example? BSNL, Air India. Right. Now what happens that government knows, government is of the opinion that there are n number of assets of both type of companies, right? Either the company listed or not listed. The assets of these companies are either lying idle or the realization of profit on those assets is comparatively low. Right? Either it is lying idle, the assets are lying idle, or the realization of profit on those resources are low. So, right? And the government wants to realize the value of all these assets which are either lying idle or which are realizing low returns on those assets, right? So in case of disinvestment, first, if the government is doing strategic disinvestment, that means it will be selling that company 100%. So in case of asset monetization, it is not like that. The government is selling the company outrightly. Secondly, neither it is reducing its stake holding in the company. Third thing, definitely it will earn uh, value to the company, as well as that value will be for the government, because company will finally give certain amount of that money to the government of India. Right? And the company which are not listed on this NSE or BSE, the whole amount will go to the government of India. For example, if there is any asset of BSNL which is lying idle, then the realization of the money will go to the government of India. So this is nation monetization pipeline, and now the policy which has been unveiled recently by the finance minister. They have come up with all these things like the maximum shared it being shared by this highways, followed by railways and other power sector and all those, right? So this is all about national monetization pipeline. Now coming to this, our syllabus, we have discussed the idea of the nationalized bank. Now I was telling you the unique case with SBI. The SBI case is like SBI was acquired by Government of India in 1955, right? And 1955, that means in 1955, this State Bank of India was already a government bank or public sector bank, right? So if you see this nationalization of the banks, it took place in 1969 and 1980s. That means that in 1969, SBI was already a government bank or public sector bank. That means there was no need to nationalize State Bank of India. So State Bank of India is unique in the sense that it is a public sector bank, but it is not a nationalized bank. So SBI is not a nationalized bank because it was not acquired through the Nationalization Act. Rather, it was undertaken by the Government of India through SBI Act. Right? So it should be clear to you. Lead bank scheme. See, lead bank scheme is popular in the sense that it's a very old scheme, and it is popular in the sense that UPSC can be interested in this because recently a committee was set up by Reserve Bank of India, and that committee has recommended for the revival of this scheme. So that's why it has become important from that point of view. So what is lead bank scheme? Lead bank, as the name suggests, bank should be leading. Bank should be leading in that particular area, first thing. And this basically all such schemes were during the time when the government was focusing on financial inclusion, right? And it was a time of 1969. That means, again, if you can recall the previous slide, it was a time when government was undertook the nationalization. It was the same time, same decade, right? So government was aggressively focusing on financial inclusion at that time. And at that time, it came with the policy of lead bank scheme. And this scheme says that government of India, government will identify a particular bank in a particular district. Right? For example, if there is district, any district A in Andhra, and in this district, SBI is having maximum branch, and there is a district B, which is having Indian Overseas Bank, right? The maximum branch of Indian Overseas Bank in district B. Now, under this scheme says that in district A, all the rural developmental related projects will be coordinated by State Bank of India. And in district B, all the rural projects will be coordinated by B. What does it mean? It means that this SBI will provide all the coordination facility to the people related to the rural projects. For example, if a person is looking for any funds, right, and he is looking for funds from Punjab National Bank, or he wants to know about any scheme related to loans in rural area, and Punjab National Bank is not supporting this person, then what it will do, this person will approach the State Bank of India, and this State Bank of India will facilitate the allocation or dispersal of funds from Punjab National Bank to this person, right? So this SBI, it's not necessary that all the loans will be dispersed only from the SBI. No, but SBI will be acting as a coordinating agency, and it will be telling all the projects related to the rural development to the people. It will coordinate with all the agencies which are related to the rural areas, right? So it will be basically acting as a link between the people and the government agencies or the banks. So a bank having a relatively large number of branches in the rural areas of a particular district. That means in district A, State Bank of India will be having the maximum branches, while in district B, IOB will be having the maximum number of branches. The lead bank is endowed with adequate financial and manpower resources, had generally been entrusted with the lead responsibility for that district. The lead bank acts as a coordinating bank, right? It will be acting as a coordinating bank for that district. Now we will try to understand the evolution of scheduled commercial banks. Right. I have put it in a chronological system so that it is easier to understand. So basically, during the British time, we were having three presidential banks, and it were in three presidencies: Bank of Bengal, Bombay, and Bank of Madras. These banks were further merged as Imperial Bank of India, and this Imperial Bank of India was acquired by the government of India in 1955 as State Bank of India, right? And at the time of independence, most of the banking sector was in the private hands. So it was a major point of concern to the government of India because these private banks were not willing to go to the rural areas because they were the apprehension. First they were having the issues of infrastructure in the rural area. Secondly, they were apprehensive of the returns on their assets, so they were not willing to go to the rural areas. And the government, because if you can recall those times after Nehru, Indira Gandhi came, and she was very much aggressive about that socialistic idea. Her socialistic ideas were to an extent much more undemocratic and more centralized. So if you can recall those times, these were the times of about abolition of privy purses, and it was a time of nationalization of everything, coals and all those things, coal mines, nationalization of, then came the nationalization of banks. So it was basically the idea of financial inclusion, because financial inclusion was not facilitated by the private banks, and all the wealth was amassed by these private people, right? So to ensure the fiscal this financial inclusion, the government of India decided to nationalize the banks. And these banks were nationalized under the Banking Regulation Act 1949, and the Reserve Bank of India was nationalized in 1949. It is about RBI. Right? In 1969, 14 banks were nationalized. In 1980s, six banks were further nationalized. That means by the end of 1980s, we were having 20 nationalized banks plus State Bank of India. After LPG reforms, Narsimhan Committee was set up to recommend for infusion of foreign and private investment in the banking sector. And in 1991, private investment as well as the foreign investment was allowed in the banking sector. And this committee was set up twice. In 1998, it further recommended for the infusion of private and foreign banks. And again, licenses were given to private banks in 2003, 2004. And in 13-14, again, Reserve Bank of India invited licenses to private banks. During 2013-14, RBI came up with the concept of differential banking. This is to be understood for UPSC point of view. All this thing, all the evolution points were only for the understanding. Now it becomes important to understand for us. Right? Actually, uh, the idea to understand is when these licenses were invited from the private banks, more than 30 parties applied, something 34, 35, including India Post. Right? Now, what happened? Out of these 35 parties, only two could be given. So why MSF welcome only? Scheduled commercial can borrow, why not central and state? You are asking, are you asking this marginal standing facility, Navya, MSF? Okay. Why MSF welcome only scheduled commercial banks can borrow? Why not central and state government banks, NBF institutions? See, the basic idea is, I think you are asking that why MSF facility is available to scheduled commercial banks, right? If I'm not wrong. Uh, See, MSF is a whatever regulations are coming are only for scheduled commercial banks first, because scheduled commercial banks are if you talk about that other for example, like if you talk about that why cooperative banks are not controlled, are not having this MSF facility. See, MSF facility, that means you are interacting with the Reserve Bank of India, right? And Reserve Bank of India will only facilitate those banks which are being regulated by Reserve Bank of India only, right? So that's why these facilities are available only to the, because Reserve Bank of India facilitate, acknowledges scheduled commercial banks, right? So naturally it will only facilitate the requirements of those banks which are being regulated by Reserve Bank of India. So that is the reason, right? So our point of understanding, point of focus should be this era, post 2013-14 era, right? And there has been questions on it on 2013 and 14 onwards. There were questions on this idea. At that time, Reserve Bank of India, okay, Reserve Bank of India analyzes all these parties which has applied for the banking, and it realized that the remaining 30 plus parties, though could not qualify for the private sector banking, but these parties were also having a substantial presence in the financial sector, first thing. Later on, at the same time, Reserve Bank of India was studying the Paytm wallet model, Paytm wallet model, right? And while it was studying the Paytm wallet model, it is basically said to be prepayment instrument, Paytm type instrument, Paytm wallet or Airtel wallet. These are basically prepaid instrument. Prepaid instrument. The Reserve Bank of India was also analyzing this type of wallets at that time, and it was impressed by the Paytm, the model of the Paytm at that time, in the sense that this idea, if popularized or acknowledged by the Reserve Bank of India, can revolutionize the banking sector. And mostly it can revolutionize the idea of financial inclusion. Financial inclusion in the sense that this Paytm wallet means that if you are having a mobile number only, you can have bank account. So the problem with the banking sector was that the banks were apprehensive of opening brick and mortar branches in the rural areas, right? And in the Paytm wallet case, mobile number was sufficient to have the bank account. That means it was a very much solution for the Reserve Bank of India to answer the issue of the financial inclusion. But there was an issue. There was a single issue with this Paytm wallet. Can anybody explain me that what is the difference between uh, if you put your money with in Paytm and if you are putting your money in bank? What is the difference? Anybody? What is the difference observed by you if you are putting your money in the Paytm wallet? And I'm not talking Paytm bank, Paytm wallet and any bank. Very good. uh, it's not security. Basically, it's interest. It is the interest part which is not available in the Paytm. You put your money with Paytm. Paytm can use that money, but it does not gives you any interest to you, to the consumer. That means Paytm is using your money without giving you any benefit, right? Then RBI realized this idea and said that they came up with a new concept, and that was this payment bank, right? And secondly, they came up with the idea of another bank, and that bank was basically wholesale bank. The idea of the wholesale bank was to cater the needs of the small merchants, right? So both of these banks were categorized under the category of differential banking. And this differential banking was nothing but the banking with a difference, banking with a difference. And this idea came after this in 2015, right? When two banks were given the private license, and this concept was invoked or provided for other 33 entities, that you people can have the licenses for differential banking. And these banks will be of two types, that is payment bank and wholesale bank, right? So most popularly, if you find in your area, you will find that there were small finance banks. So payment bank, if you talk about payment bank, you'll find that payment bank is nothing but it is type of a bank, but it is without any brick and mortar. It is without any brick and mortar. And the target audience is, it is having the target is small businessmen and poor people. That means the people who are earning, who were initially catered by microfinance institutions. Right? We discussed yesterday. So the audience for this payment bank was the poor people, small people who were earning less amount, and there's the potential candidate to run Paytm banks, mobile phone companies, consumer, all the companies which were which applied for those private banks. Now, the issue with the most prominent issue before the RBI was how to keep safe the deposits of the people. Right? That was the major alarming issue before the Reserve Bank of India, because the target audience were the poor people. If the money of the deposits of these people becomes NPA, or any bank defaulted on their payments, then what will be the future of these people? Because these were very small people. For that, Reserve Bank of India came up with an idea that these banks cannot give loans, because this is the only risk factor of a bank. If the bank is not giving loan to the people, then there is no issue of the default, because their asset is can't be converted into NPA if they are not giving anything, any loan to the people, right? So this payment bank, the characteristic of the payment bank is that they will not give any loan to the customer. If there is not giving limit loan to the people, that means this bank cannot default. And when this bank cannot default, that means there is no risk to the people who have deposited money with this bank. So this is the beauty of the payment bank, and this is the idea of the payment bank. This question was asked in UPSC, right, in 2015 or 16, when this idea came. Wholesale banking is nothing but, wholesale banking is about the uh, basically the small finance bank or wholesale banking. It is about giving, providing you the loans, right? Providing you the loans, what it is saying, that it is collecting money from the small people, and it is acting like MFI, and giving loans to the small businessman in that area, right? That means it is very specifically doing the job of providing investment to the people. See, wholesale bank is basically that idea also. What you are seeing, we'll discuss it in investment banking, all that. Wholesale banking is an umbrella concept, right? In case of differential banking, that part simply means that the idea of the small finance banks. That means you will collect the money from the small investors, right? And then you can give that money to the investor in that region only, right? So with reference to this differential banking idea, wholesale banking when applied to the differential idea banking, it simply means that it's the idea of the small finance banks. Universal banking. Okay, I forgot investment banker. I think it has been, no, investment banking. I have covered that concept in market. It is relevant over there. I have covered it there. Universal banking. Any idea about universal banking? Anybody? Okay, can you tell me a difference between when you visited the banks 10 or 12 years back and you are visiting banks right now? Any difference you find with respect?
Universal banking is a system in which banks provides a wide variety of comprehensive financial services.
What sort of difference you find in these 10 years, 10 or 15 years? What type of activities banks are undertaking besides their core banking functions? Messages, I didn't get you, Raghunath. See, digitalization, ATM cards, okay. Gold loans, okay, very good. See, in the conservative banking, it was banking was supposed to that you are going to the banks, you deposit your money, and you are taking money out of the banks, right? Uh, no, Raghunath, it's not like that. So the conservative banking system was about depositing the money and withdrawal of the money, right? But what happened now, if you see the banking, if you visit any bank, you will find that in the bank itself, for example, if you talk about SBI, you will have a counter where you will find a person is involved in selling SBI mutual fund, right? If you go to another counter, you will find that a person of SBI is selling SBI insurance. On another counter, you will find that a person is involved in SBI housing finance, right? On another counter, you will find that a person is involved in giving you gold loan, right? Or n number of activities which are beyond the core functioning of the bank. That is basically the concept of the universal banking. That means under the umbrella of bank, you are carrying out n number of financial services which are to an extent related to the banking sector, but they are not directly related to the banking functions, right? For example, mutual fund, insurance, gold loans, focus on the home loans, right? These are auxiliary functions of the banks, right? So universal banking is saying that you are involved in n number of banking related activities besides your core functions. This is the idea of the universal banking. So in 2008, prior to this prior to this recession, this idea basically erupted in Europe, right? But this idea got a setback in 2008. In India, though it is practiced, but in principally it has not been accepted because of the 2008. Can anybody give me the reason why? Why 2008 uh, appears to be a jolt to the idea of universal banking. So what are the problems? What are the benefits? Inflation, no. Why do you think that to how financial crisis impacted the idea of universal banking? That's what I want to ask. My question is, uh, the idea of the universal banking was very much popular prior to 2008 in Europe, and that idea was attracted the world. But after 2008, this idea got a jolt, right? It got a shot because it affected whole world. See,
Sir, is it like cascading effect, sir?
I don't know. See, can you tell me that what was the genesis of 2008 recession? Which bank? 2008 recession was basically because of
Lehman
the
Brothers.
collapse of the Lehman Brothers, right? And I think I told you in the past that at that time there was a popular saying that too big to fail, right? Means it was too big that it cannot be failed. So the second interpretation of that idea was if it failed, then how much implication it will be having on the economy, right? That means if that bank failed, then it will be having a huge impact upon the economy. So universal banking is basically idea of creating a bank, creating a financial entity, which is facilitating every functions. That means you are creating an elephant. You're creating an elephant. If that elephant goes on and on, then it's okay. If it fails, then what? Right? So after the 2008 recession, failing of this Lehman Brothers give a jolt to this idea because the countries realize that if we created the concepts of universal banking, if we focus on this universal banking idea, then we will create the banks which will be big. And if in case these banks fail, then it can create a situation like recession of 2008, which was created by a collapse of the single bank, that is Lehman. And if you see in Europe, uh, after the Lehman collapse, many banking institutions collapsed, right, because of that recession. So that's why this idea of the universal banking could not survive long, right? But yes, this is practiced. Why it is practiced by the banks? What do you think? That what is the benefit of this idea of universal banking? Anyone? See, the most benefit of idea of the universal banking means that it is creating efficiency in the banking sector. For example, initially what was happening that you were having separate entities for mutual fund, for insurance, for a number of services. You are having a number of different entities for different number of financial services. But now you will find that everything is under one roof, right? That means you are creating efficiency in the banking system. So this is all about whether I have discussed this MCLR or not with you. I have discussed this marginal cost of lending rate or not.
No, sir.
No. See, when I was discussing, I think in monetary policy, I discussed one thing that there has always been an tussle between the Reserve Bank of India and the banks, and it is basically related to the confrontation between the Reserve Bank of India and banks that whenever Reserve Bank of India uh, is reducing the rates, at that time banks are not passing that reduction of the rates to the consumer. That means there is no proper monetary policy transmission. First thing, this monetary policy transmission was not taking place in the past. Because of that, Reserve Bank of India came up with an idea. And the idea was, Reserve Bank of India said that now onwards, we will be having a formula, a mathematical formula, in which we will take into account everything, because banks were saying that we are having n number of issues. Then RBI says, what are the issues? They say that we are putting money with you in the form of CRR, right? We are having issues of NPA, and you are asking us to pay higher interest rates on the on n number of schemes like PPF and all those, so Sukanya Samriddhi scheme. Then the Reserve Bank of India said that, okay, don't worry, we will be having a formula, and that formula will be having each and every component, right? And the most beautiful part of that component is, because I told you, whenever Reserve Bank of India is announcing any policy, everybody focuses upon the repo rates, right? And then they said the beauty of this formula will be that we will be having a component that is marginal cost of funds. And that marginal cost of funds will be nothing but it will be taking into account the changes in the repo rates, right? Sorry. So if you see this marginal cost of lending rates, it is basically a new benchmark lending rate. That means now onwards, the banks have to decide their lending rate, the rate at which they will be giving loans to the people, and that rates will be decided based upon these four components. And these four components are negative carry on account of CRR. That means this money, because bank was saying that we have put 4% of money with you, right? And this is lying idle with you. So, and you are asking us to not to charge, not to take into account this money while we are giving loans. So they say, okay, you can take into account this CRR amount. Then they said second, operating cost, right? Naturally, and it operating cost includes all those things like conversion of NPA. It also includes all these things like more interest rates on certain amounts like PPF and all those, tenure premium. This is basically the more the amount of the more the time of the loan payment, and more the interest rates. Marginal cost of funds, this include basically the idea of change in the interest rates, right? Which is mostly repo rate, the most important thing, repo rate, right? So MCLR is the new benchmark lending rate at which banks give money to the borrowers. Now, RBI and banks are also finding some confrontation on this issue also, because RBI still finds that the monetary policy transmission is not taking place. So they are planning for a new rate in the coming times, and I'll discuss it with you. So this is the idea of the basically MCLR, marginal cost of lending rate. Any question in the banking sector?
No, sir, it's clear.
Okay. Then we'll start with market. See, to understand the concept of market, uh, we'll be starting with an example. So, market is basically a platform from where you are having the facility of having the money, right? First thing. Secondly, there are two methods of having the money. And to understand it through an example, for example, you want to start a company, and for a company, you need, for example, 10 lakh of money. So in case of 10 lakhs, you ask your friends, you ask your five of your friends, and you said four and you five, four friends, including you five. And you ask your friends that I want to start a company, and would you like to be uh, shareholder in the company? That means everybody will be putting 2 lakhs rupees each. Right? Then they will say that, okay, realizing the realizing profile of the company. For example, if the company is in electrical vehicle, they will analyze this and they will say, okay, we will be participating in the company. Everybody will be giving you 2 lakh rupees. Now in that company, everybody will be having the equal shareholding. That means everybody will be the master of 20% shares in that company, first thing. And after 1 year, if this 10 lakhs become 100 lakhs, right? Then everybody will be the owner of 20 lakhs. Right? After 1 year, if that company is having assets of 100 lakhs, that means everybody will be having an asset of 20 lakhs, first thing. And on the contrary, if this company goes into the losses and it becomes company of 1 lakh rupees only, then everybody will be owner of 20,000 rupees. This is the first arrangement of having of funds, right? So in this company, for example, you were Mr. A. This Mr. A was only having shares of 20% in this company, in this arrangement, in this whole arrangement. Secondly, you find that these all five persons were sailing in the same boat, right? They were sinking together and they were rising together. It might be a possibility that uh, these 2% talks about that they will be giving only 1 lakh, and you decided that you will be depositing 4 lakhs, right? So that means out of these 10 lakhs you give 4. That means you were owner of 10, 400, 40%, right? While they were owner of only 10%. So when this company becomes of 100 lakhs, then these people were owner of only 10 lakhs and you were owner of 40 lakhs. When this company goes into the losses, you were owner of only 40,000 and these were owner of only 10,000. That means when there was profit, the profit was as per the shareholding, and when there were losses, the losses were as per the shareholding, right? This was the first arrangement. The second arrangement goes like this, that you uh, this was 10 lakhs. All your friends said that they are not interested in being the shareholding of the company, and they said that we will be only giving you the money as debt. That means we will giving you in the form of loans. And four of your friends decided to give you 2 lakhs rupees each in the form of loan. And they said that they will be giving you the money at 10% of interest rate. Now, after 1 year, the first case was this company becomes a company of 100 lakhs, right? Now, these all your friends will only be getting 2 lakhs plus 20,000 only. 10%, this is interest, and 2 lakhs your initial capital which was given by these people, one person. If it went into the losses of 1 lakh rupees, this company become only 1 lakh company. At that time also, this person will get 2 lakhs plus 20,000. Are you getting the difference between these two arrangements? Anybody who is not getting this difference? Now, what difference do you find in these two type of arrangements? Anybody? What can you conclude? Debts are riskless, okay? Anyone? Risk rate concept, okay. See, in the first case, what we did, that arrangement is said to be the equity arrangement, shareholding, equity. And the second arrangement is basically debt arrangement, right? Usko normally we said it loans, right? So in the equity arrangement, the equity said that it is basically making you the shareholder. In the first case, you were the shareholder in the company, right? And yes, and the returns on the equity are subjected to the profits and losses in the company. While in the debt is basically you will get the fixed return irrespective of the losses and profits in the company. And in case of debt, you are not the owner of the company. You are having zero stack holding in the company. While in case of equity holding, you are, for example, if you are even having a single share in any company, right? Single share, you are stakeholder in that company. And every year, if you are having share of any company, every year you will find that you will receive a letter from that company. Whenever they are having annual general meetings, then they invite each and every stakeholder of the company. And the best example to understand is when I asked you to watch a movie, Guru. In the last, when Abhishek Bachchan is asking, he's having an annual general meeting, and he asked questions to the people who are the shareholders of the company. That is basically the role of the shareholders, that every decision is taken by the consensus of the shareholders. That is different story, that the value of, for example, if there are crores of the shares of a company and you are holding a single share, then definitely there is no voice. You are having effectively no voice in comparison to the people who are holding launch share of the participation in that company. But yes, shareholding means that you are having a role in that company. You are having you are the decisive in that company's decisions. So this is the difference between equity and debt, right? And capital market are basically platforms which are providing you all these things. They are providing you a platform in which you can engage, you can participate in the equity market and debt market. First thing. Secondly, whatever we will discuss in this PPT for this class, it is basically catering to the long-term assets. Long-term asset means whatever you are transacting, right? Whether you are borrowing, whether you are investing in the equity, it is considered that it is for the purposes of having that money for maturity greater than 1 year. They are said to be long-term markets. This is capital markets, which we are referring here. What I talked about the platform, this is basically catering to the needs for long term. That is the time period for more than 1 year. Um, don't talk in the practical sense that if you will say that we can purchase the equity today and sell it tomorrow, right? Yes, you can do it, but normally it's for in the sense of long term, and because we will be discussing, when we will be discussing money market, then we will realize that what does it mean, right? But now you have to understand that it is the market, it's a platform which is providing a platform to the people from where they can have the money in the form of equity and debt, and that too for the long term, right? First thing, financial market. Financial market is basically, it's an umbrella term which is providing you a platform in which you are transacting in all these things, right? So basically, broadly, it's of two types: money market and capital market. Capital market we discuss for the long term. This money market is specifically for long term borrowings, right? That we'll discuss separately. That means if you want to, when we were discussing monetary policy, then I was using a term overnight facility, right? Overnight is basically short term. So whatever money banks we refer to, we are discussing in the monetary policy that banks are taking borrowing money from RBI, banks are borrowing money from the banks. That, and we were using again and again a term overnight facility. That is basically part of money market. That is not a part of this capital market, right? So broad, first we are having a financial market, right? And that financial market can be further divided into two parts, that is money and capital. Capital we are discussing this, we will discuss primary, secondary and all those things. Money market we will discuss later on, right? So capital markets are for the purpose of long-term assets, long-term borrowing, long-term equities, while money market are for the short term, that is less than 1 year, right? And besides this, these are having OTC markets, over the counter. These are basically small markets. Small markets means, broadly, if you talk about the exchanges, you have heard only this NSE, BSE, which are at the pan India level, right? And OTC markets are local markets. For example, if you are going, if you see in Delhi, Hyderabad, there might be certain markets which will be dealing with the needs of the local companies, right? So that is over the counter, right? And organized are pan India, that is BSE, NSE, right? Then this is SEBI. Who regulates this, right? Who's the regulator? The regulator of this platform is SEBI, Securities and Exchange Board of India. And broadly, it is having the following functions: protective functions, developmental functions, and regulatory functions. Regulatory simply means they are defining the guidelines which should be followed by the investor as well as the companies. Developmental functions, they are taking such steps so that these markets can be promoted in order to attract more and more investments. Protective functions means the idea is to protect the interest of the investors. And to understand it, the best example is you haven't there's a movie Sri 420, Hindi movie, and there is a parody, Jaspal Bhatti. If you can watch it please. Jaspal Bhatti का एक parody है. It is about share market. It's of 20 to 25 minutes. Watch it. I'll tell you what happens in this. Basically, there is a person. I don't know, Hyderabad, I haven't seen the people who are गोलगप्पा का कॉन्सेप्ट है हैदराबाद में. आई डोंट फाइंड, और मेरे को ध्यान नहीं है वैसे. गोलगप्पा जो होता है, जो सूजी का होता है, वो सब अदर अदर नेम्स होता है. तो वो बेसिकली इट्स वेरी पॉपुलर इन नॉर्थ इंडिया. सो in this video of 20 minutes, what happens that there's a person who is selling golgappas in Chandigarh, right? And Jaspal Bhatti is a advisor, right, consultant, sort of investment consultant. Once he visited him on his shop. He is having not shop proper, उसको ना हमारे यहाँ ढकेल टाइप का बोलते हैं normally. He is having a simple वो mobile जो होती है shop. So he comes to him and he said to him, okay, I have an idea. बोलता है, what is the idea? Then he said, I have an idea that if you want to raise money, then I can help you out. Then he said, nobody knows me, then why people will give money to me? Bole, leave it to me, I'll do that. Then he said that, okay, we are making a company out of in your name, and he comes with a company XYZ. I don't know the name. I don't know, actually recall the name. XYZ Water Balls Company, right? Then he started. He said that we will list your company on the share market. And then he asked him a question: do you have any relative in foreign? Then he said, okay, yes, I am having my brother, cousin brother in London. And said, okay, then it's very good. That means we will be having a collaboration with that foreign entity, and we will put in the paper that your brother is infusing the FDI in the company, right? They filed, they listed company on the on this BSE. And what Jaspal Bhatti did, he hired a broker, and that broker is in Mumbai, and the work of the broker is just to create misinformation amongst the people. And in Mumbai, that broker is sitting and he is always reading the newspaper. And when people approaches him that what is the status of market, then he said, oh, there is a new company in the market and they are raising the money, and that company has a lot of future. Then people say, what is the future? That FDI is coming into that company. And the share started with 10 rupees. And with the news, what happens that Jaspal Bhatti in the starting purchased most of the sectors, most of the his near and dear ones purchased that shares of uh, a lot of shares, right? Then it created a jump in the market in those shares. So what happens that finally what happens when this share reaches to 300, 400 rupees? Then Jaspal Bhatti says to that person, okay, this is the time to realize the profit out of these shares. Then finally, people concluded that it was nothing except a simple shop, and everybody loses his money, right? So this is basically what happens in the past, that people were unaware of these things, that people were made fool, right? See, 420, this movie, it is also this on the same line. So protective function means the SEBI ensures that investors are being provided the correct information. So whenever there is any change in the company profile, whenever there is any issue with the company, they have to put in record with the SEBI. If they are not putting in record with SEBI, then SEBI penalizes them, right? And one of the best, there's a term insider trading. Anybody aware of the term insider trading? Okay, Google it. I'll ask it tomorrow. Okay, somebody has responded. Yes, sir. Okay, good. If scam 1992, insider trading is something else. Insider trading is like, for example, if you are
It
okay,
is a ill-
बोलिए.
it is a illegal practice of trading on a stock exchange to one's own advantage.
Right. See, what happens in insider trading, that, for example, you're a person who is in the management of a company. For example, you're a director, you are in the higher position, and you are privy to the information of that company. Now, what happens that based upon that information, because the future of the company depends upon the on the information. For example, if a company is there, and if the company is going to having the quarterly results, and in those results the company is having the losses, substantial losses, then definitely when this report will come into the market, then the share market will lose, right? So what happens if you are the director and you have the information that after the quarterly results, the share of the company will be reduced to a very low, then what you did, you tell your friends that the shares are going to the share are going to lose. So your friends started selling those share market. And in case if the company is coming up with the profits, then you will ask your friends, okay, purchase the shares. That means you executed that job only because you were privy to that information. That is basically insider trading. So SEBI says that the person who are privy to such informations, might be directors, might be the higher officials, if those people or their relatives or their near and dears are found active in such activities, right? then they're liable to be charged under insider trading. Right. So this is insider trading. So this is all for today. Tomorrow we will be continuing with this market. Any query?